Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of LaTeX tutorial for beginners. In this video, I am going to show you how to introduce row spacing in your LaTeX tables. So before we start the coding itself, let's quickly look at these approaches that I'm going to show you. So I have them here in this document. This first table here shows the default spacing that LaTeX gives you when you create a table. And these are the three approaches I will show you. Now, each of these approaches is useful in certain scenarios. Let's take a look at the arraystretch approach. So in this approach, if you want a larger row height, let me just put it that way, the spacing, if you want a spacing which is larger compared to the others, then you have to use the arraystretch. In addition, the arraystretch applies the row spacing to all the rows. That is what it does. So if you want all your rows to have the same row spacing, then just use arraystretch. Now with the extra row height, it also applies the spacing to all the rows. In addition, what it does is that it applies the spacing just above the rows, each of the rows. So that's what you see here. All right, when you zoom in, you see. So the spacing is applied just above the rows. That's what it does. Now the third one here, which is bigstrut, is flexible compared to the others. So it allows you to adjust the spacing both above and below the rows, and also it allows you to adjust the spacing for specific rows. So if you want flexibility, if you want to be able to modify each of the rows individually, then you have to use the bigstrut. So these are the three approaches we are going to look at. So let's get started. I'll just close this, and then we will just open a new file, a new LaTeX file. So I'm starting with the arraystretch. That's the first one we are going to look at. So let's start. So again, I'm going to show the arraystretch approach. All right, so this is the approach we are going to use in this first section of this tutorial. So again, I repeat that arraystretch applies the row spacing across all the rows, and it also introduces space. It introduces the row spacing both above and below the rows, and it also gives you a larger row space height compared to the other approaches. So that's what you need to take note from this particular section. Now let's start the exercise. So I've opened my LaTeX file. So I'll just save it first. I'll just save it here first. All right, so we can proceed now. So first of all, we are going to initialize our LaTeX document. So I'll just say document class. All right, so I'll just say /document class 11pt article. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm also going to say /use package, okay, for captions. All right, so this allows you to do some customization with the caption of the tables. So that's what you need to take note from here. All right, so I'll first create a default table, just a normal table, and then we'll use that to do the exercise. So I'll do it this way. I'll begin my document first, and I'll end my document. Then in between, we are going to do our stuffs. So I'll start with /begin table, and I'll just specify where I want this table to be created. Okay, so the placement option, I'll use H, and I'll just say /end table. That's what I'm going to do first. I can quickly just run it just to make sure everything is okay. Then I will proceed. So here I'm going to center everything. So I'll just say begin center. You could also use slash centering, all right, but I'll just say slash begin center, just like this, and then I'll just say slash end center. That's also done for us. All right, then in between I'll just put my stuff. So I'll start with a caption, and then I'll just say default. I'll just say default spacing. So that is what I have here. I can run this just to make sure it works. Yeah, there's table 1. That's what it gives, default spacing. All right. Now I will now create the table itself. So I'll just say slash. I'll say slash begin tabular, and I'll indicate what I want. I am going to use 2 columns, and each of these columns I want them to be centered. So I will just say C, bring my vertical line C, and I will close the curly brackets. Now, because I want both the left hand side and the right hand side to all have vertical lines, I'll bring another vertical line here and also here. All right, so that's what I'll need to do here first. Then I'll just say slash end tabular, just to end it, so that I'll be able to get everything within this particular space. Okay, I want all of them to be here. All right, because this is what the tabular environment will help us do. So once I have this, then all that I have to do is to start a horizontal line, which you can, depending on your output, or depending on how you want the table to appear. All right, so I will just want a horizontal line above as well. Then I'll indicate my first row. So I'll just say A and row 1. So that's my first row. I'll do slash H line. I'll say B and row 2, and it's slash H line. Then the third row, C and row 3. All right, so this is the default table. I'll run it to give the table. That's what we have. So this is the default spacing. Let me just put it there. So the default spacing is what I've done here, and now we are going to create another table and apply the row spacing. That's what we are going to do next. So let's do this. So if you are going to use the arraystretch approach, which we are going to code very soon, then we also need to indicate another option. We need that option as well. Okay, now let's do this. We have this already done. I think I'll just format it a bit. We go to other table. Now here, what we are going to do, because we are customizing it, we want this new command to be confined to that particular table that we are going to create. We are first going to bring these braces. All right. And so what this simply means is that everything we are going to do, if we even make any changes, some of the changes might affect subsequent commands. So to avoid all those things, we make sure that all changes happen within this brace. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, if you are going to use the arraystretch, we need to specify that we need to call it. And in calling it, because we want to do some modification, okay, with the rows, we are also going to indicate some form of value to let arraystretch know what to do. So what I'm going to do is to say slash renew command, and then I'll indicate under curly brackets. I'll say slash array stretch. And then I'll indicate the row spacing I want. Array stretch will have its default row spacing. So this number is to let you know that you can modify that value. You can change that value. All right. So different people will have different values they want to use for the spacing. So knowing how to set them up is what we are looking at here. So once you set it up, then you can now begin your table. So here we'll still use the same command, okay, for the table. I'll just do a copy and paste. I think that'll be better. So I'll format this and then I'll just do a copy and paste. All right, so it's the same thing that we are doing, but this time we are now putting it within this frame. All right, so I'll just do a copy and paste here, and then I'll put them here. All right, and I made mention, I'll repeat again, that I want this change to only affect the table, this table here. And so that is why everything is within this brace, this and then this. Okay, so that we can limit the effect of the changes I've made, especially with the renew command for array stretch. All right, so here let's change the caption to array stretch, and then let's run it. All right, so we have both here, and we can see the changes happening here. So this is for array stretch. All right, and take note that the changes, I will zoom in again. The row spacing has been applied to all rows, and for each row it's applied to the top and then the bottom, so above and below. So this is array stretch for us. All right, so that's how you are going to use array stretch to introduce spacing in your rows in a LaTeX table. So let's move on to the next approach. All right, so I'll first close this and then open a new file, and then we can start the next approach. So let's do this. So in the next approach, we are going to be looking at how to use the extrarowheight to also introduce spacing in the rows. Okay, spacing that we need. All right, and so in this approach, what we should take note is that when you are using the extrarowheight command to introduce row spacing, that spacing is going to be introduced just above the rows. Changes will be applied to all the rows, like what we see here, and then for each of the rows you will see that spacing is applied just above it for each of the rows. That's what the extrarowheight does. So let's start. Let's move to the coding session and then start the exercise. So we will start by creating a new document. So again, we will do it here. So I will just say slash document class 11 points pt and then article. I need to make sure everything is okay here. We will use slash use package caption. Then we are going to add another package which we need. All right, so the other package that we need is called array. That's what we use for the extrarowheight. So I'll say slash use package array. Then I'll begin my document and then end the document. Then I'll create the default table first. We need that. So I'll just paste what we did previously, which is here. I'll just put it here. I'll just say default spacing, or I can also say default. All right. So this is the default table, the table with the default spacing that we are going to compare what we will create with, which is here. Okay, default spacing. And then we are now going to create another table and introduce the row spacing. Okay, so here we are using the extra row height. So again, because we want the change to affect just that table we are going to create, I'll first indicate my curly bracket, which is here. It's very important we take note of that. So that curly bracket, or braces as we also call it, and then we are going to indicate our commands. So for the extra row height approach that we are going to use, we need to first set the length. And so what I'll do first is to say slash set length. I bring my brace again. I'll say slash extra row height. Then I will indicate the value I want, the row height. Okay, so this will influence the spacing that is indicated. So we need this information. So this is what we have now to set the length, and then we can now create the table and then proceed. So again, we are going to use the same table that we had previously. So I'll just paste it here, and then I'll just change this to extra row height. So just copy and paste the table, and then you are okay. All right, so this is the table that we have, right? So for those who are watching, if you have not copied and pasted it, you can also just check here. This is the table, and then just work on it. All right. And if you have your own table that you also want to use, go ahead. You can also just paste it here. The most important thing is to know how to adjust the spacing with this command. That's what is important, right? So if you have your own table that you are also using, that's also perfect. Just use it and then get started. So this is it. And just make sure that you also have these braces. It's very important that you have them there as well. So now I'm going to run this command. So let's run it and see what we get. All right. So this is the extra row height. We see that also here. And you can see that the spacing has been introduced above. All right. I'll just enlarge it here a bit. Let's enlarge it. All right, so if you compare this and this, you see that the spacing is what? Above the rows. So this is for extra row height. It's very, very simple. So basically all that I need to do is to just indicate this command, and then all your other commands for the table, you put it there. So any table at all, just use it and then you'll be fine. Just make sure you follow the syntax for LaTeX. I can adjust the spacing here with the value here and then run it. That also indicates the changes. So as for the spacing and how much spacing you want, that is for you to decide. So you can try with different values and see which one makes sense to you or which one is okay for you, and then you just use that one. So this is for the extra row heights and how we use it to introduce or adjust the spacing in LaTeX tables. All right, so let's proceed to the next one. So I'll open a new file and then we proceed with the third approach. Now, the third approach that we are going to use to adjust the spacing of our tables is to use the bigstrut command. All right, so the bigstrut command is here, and that's what we are going to use. So with the bigstrut command, it allows you to adjust the spacing for individual rows compared to the arraystretch, or let's say the arraystretch and the extrarowheight apply spacing to all rows by default. All right, all rows. With the bigstrut, it allows you to adjust the spacing for individual rows, and also it allows you to even indicate whether you want the spacing to be above or below. So in this next coding we are going to do, we are going to look at how to introduce or adjust the spacing in rows, and for some of the rows we are going to introduce spacing above and below. For others we will do just above, and then for some we will do just below. So you can see from this PDF here. So that's what we are going to do here. So I will come here and then we will start. So again, we will start by initializing our document. So that will be /document class 11pt article. So that is it. Then I'll say /use package caption, and then for bigstrut we need to also import it. So I'll say /use package bigstrut. So that is it. I'll begin my document, I'll end it, and then what I'm going to do is to get my table. So this is the default table that I'm using. So I'll just paste here. You can copy and paste it. So there's the default table. These are the commands. Or if you have your own table too, you can just use that one. That's also fine. All right. So I'm going to run this first so that we see the default spacing. Okay, the table with the default spacing. So this is it. And now we are going to create another table and adjust the spacing using bigstrut. So that's what we are going to do. So let's first introduce a brace, okay, to confine the commands to that very table. And then we are going to create our table. Now, again, I'll use the same table I did earlier, and then we will do the modification on that table. So I'll just paste the table here, write the second table, and then I'm going to change this to bigstrut. That's the caption. And by the way, I have an introductory tutorial on tables. So for those who are interested, just go and watch that video. All right. So that's bigstrut. Then that's what we do. We now have 3 rows here, which we are going to adjust. I'll show you how to use the bigstrut to modify each of them. So for the first row, what we are going to do is to introduce adjust the spacing above and below it. So to adjust spacing, you use bigstrut. That's it. And then you have to bring a slash. So we say /bigstrut like this. So when you introduce the bigstrut like this, then what you are doing is that you are adjusting the space above and below. All right. So let's run this. If you run this, let's run this. Let's get this table. So if you look at this, let me just even enlarge it. So if you look at this, you see that the spacing has been adjusted above and below. So that's where we use this one. Now, if let's say you want the spacing to be above this row. So for example, for row B, we want the space to be adjusted. We want the space above to be adjusted. So again, we bring our /bigstrut. And this time we add an option, which actually came when you type. Let's just do it again. So bigstrut. All right. And then we'll bring a square bracket and we'll say T. So T means top. Let's put it that way. So top. So above, top of this row, T. So let's run this command. When you run it, you will see that the space above has been adjusted. So that's for bigstrut. All right. So that's for this one. If you want it below, great. That can also be done. Then in that case, what we need to do is to just say, I'll just copy and paste here again. And then here, instead of T, we will say B. B simply means below. And so when we do it this way, then the space below is what is going to be adjusted. So let's run it. And then let's see the change. So you can see the change here. All right. So bigstrut allows you to modify the rows individually. All right. And then you indicate what the kind of adjustment you want done. So that is how we do it in bigstrut as well. So this is how we adjust the row spacing for tables in LaTeX using bigstrut. All right. So there are more tutorials that we are here to cover on tables. So just make sure to come back to this channel and then watch more. Now, if you also want to learn how to adjust the columns of tables, then watch this video right here.